listening to NPR, the National Patriot Radio. We broadcast the most interesting news from the front, both new and old. If you're new here, then prepare to join millions of loyal fans and listeners all over the globe. Congratulations, you're part of the NPR family now.
That's right, Will. Today we'll be broadcasting the latest news from the war, the bombing of Germany. Previously in the massive conflict that has been spanning the globe, the Allies, including us stoic Americans, have managed to push back the ferocious Führer and his vicious hordes of brainwashed slaves. No longer did they hold all of Europe within their grasp. No longer did they conspire with the Japanese to overthrow our peaceful, perfect society.
Now we push Bowler to drive him from our presence. In order to accomplish this brave fate, our patriotic American men have volunteered their lives to strike out against our enemy with the most noble and American form of warfare, bombing.
Previously, in 1940, our allies Britain had used their RAF, Royal Air Force for you listeners at home, to bomb the rear area of Germany. Of course, being the refined, merciful human beings us allies are, they chose to only target industrial and militarily significant locations to decrease civilian casualties. In 1941, not yet in the war, but wishing to aid those dependent upon us, our grand country organized the Army Air Force, allowing for increased autonomy within the Department of War. Around the same time, on December 7th, 1941, as many of you loyal Americans know, our brave Navymen were brutally attacked by the Japanese, in an event that would eventually be called Pearl Harbor, but also forced our president to sign us up for the war effort. Now being forced to enter into conflict, our normally passive government was forced to activate the 8th Bomber Command, a coalition of brave pilots prepared to risk their lives bombing Germany in broad daylight.
Interesting. Now tell me, Garrett, why did they decide to bomb in daylight? Wouldn't it be easier to do it at night?
Excellent question, Austin. The truth is, our boys did it to save lives.
How so?
Before we Allies had regained our place as the top dogs in this war, Germany had invested their Air Force in a series of brutal bombing raids against Britain. These raids were mostly carried out at night and came at a terrible cost. In fact, we have a special guest here tonight to speak about these occurrences. Ladies and gentlemen, Ernie Pyle. Well, Mr. Pyle is getting settled. Let's break for a word from our sponsors.
Keep the communist way with anti-communist spray. The communist spray. Buy it today. Rest in peace in your bed without fear of the red. Anti-communist spray. Buy it today. Will Corporations is not responsible for injuries, choking hazards, disintegrations, or loss of head that result from anti-communist spray products. We're back, folks, and I'm here with war correspondent Ernie Pyle. How are you, Mr. Pyle? I'm very good, thank you. Now, as you're here, we were wondering if you could describe the London bombing to us and what really stood out to you. Well, Will, it was the night when London was ringed and stabbed with fire. They came just after dark, and somehow you could sense from the quick, bitter firing of the guns, and there was to be no monkey business this night. Shortly after the sirens wailed, you could hear the Germans grinding overhead. In my room, with its black curtains drawn across the windows, you could feel the shake from the guns. You could hear the boom, crump, 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 of heavy bombs after walk of tearing buildings apart. They were not too far away.
That's quite the story. Could you tell us a little about what you noticed?
Well, since it was night time, the fighters didn't have very good visibility. Of course, they weren't trying to avoid any civilians, so they didn't exactly need it. Terrible stuff, just terrible. Thank you, Mr. Pyle. Folks, a round of applause for our special guest.
See, folks, that's why our noble troops only bomb in the brightness of day. It not only increases our accuracy, but prevents us from hurting civilian targets.
Our brave American boys could risk themselves in such a manner for such unhuman, ungrateful monsters.
That's right, Austin. Unfortunately for those inhuman, ungrateful monsters, as you can so aptly call them, have destroyed over 200 of our daylight bombers so far, and it is only expected to get worse. Wait, I'm getting something from the front. Well, folks, our high command has finally agreed to bomb Berlin. Instead of just its industrial sites, along with the rest of the Allies, our planes have already succeeded in an enormous raid on German city of Dresden. The first wave of RAF bombers dropped incendiary and explosives upon the city at night. In the morning, 800 more RAF bombers arrived, dropping 1,400 tons of explosives, and 1,100 incendiaries on Dresden. Unfortunately, 6 of our valiant bombers were shot down. A moment of silence for the brave American and British soldiers who perished in this attack.
Well, Garratt, those rotten Germans were asking for it. They honestly can't expect us to continue our kind ways for much longer, especially with the way they have treated us so far.
Quite right, Will.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, and that concludes our radio special. Tune in next week for Stalin, Man or Alien Invader.